Imagine this. The music is soft, the lights are warm, and a bride spins slowly under a ceiling of glittering decorations. Then, within seconds, that same ceiling turns into a raining inferno, and the only sound left in the room is screaming. Welcome to When Dream Weddings Became Deadly Nightmares. True stories of couples who woke up planning the happiest day of their lives and never imagined it would be their last. Stay with me, because the final story doesn't just change how you look at weddings, it might change what you do the next time you walk into any crowded event. The illusion of a safe, happy ending. Weddings feel untouchable. You've got months of planning, thousands of dollars poured into the venue, the dress, the food, the photos. There are checklists, contracts, planners, and coordinators. Everything is designed to control chaos. That's the illusion. Because these couples did everything right. They booked venues, sent invites, followed traditions, and trusted professionals. And yet, between freak accidents, poor safety standards, and pure human negligence, their dream days were destroyed in ways that look like scenes from a disaster movie. As you hear each story, think about this simple question. On a day built around love and trust, how much danger would you actually notice before it's too late? Story 1. Beyond the Clouds, the Lightning Wedding. Our first couple thought they were doing what so many modern couples dream of, turning their love story into a cinematic experience. They chose a dramatic historic site perched high above the landscape. Ancient stone walls, sweeping views, the kind of place that looks like it was made for drone shots and Instagram. Friends and family traveled in, phones ready, dressed to the nines, excited to capture the view above the clouds. Throughout the day, the sky grew darker and more theatrical. Clouds rolled in, thunder rumbled softly in the distance. To most people, that just meant better, moodier photos, the kind photographers love. As the storm approached, a group of guests gathered at the edge of the fort for one last round of pictures. They were laughing, posing, leaning against old stone, with the sky behind them flashing in the distance. A few people joked, "We better be quick before we get struck by lightning." And then the joke became reality. Without warning, a blinding white flash tore across the sky and slammed into the fort. For a split second, everything disappeared. Sound, sight, awareness. Witnesses described it as the world going completely white and silent. When the light faded, people who had been standing were suddenly on the ground. Phones lay shattered. Bodies were twisted in ways that didn't look human anymore. Some guests staggered up, dazed. Others didn't move at all. In an instant, a joyous gathering turned into a mass casualty scene. The bride and groom, who thought this location would be the perfect backdrop for the start of their future, instead had to live with the knowledge that their wedding day was the last day for several of their loved ones. How many times have you seen couples push through bad weather for just one more photo? Thunder in the distance, dark clouds overhead, but everyone shrugs it off because the pictures will look amazing. The reality: lightning doesn't care about your wedding schedule, your photographer, or your budget. The most terrifying part is how mundane the lead-up was. No one thought they were doing anything dangerous. They weren't playing with fire, they weren't flying, they weren't on a boat. They were just standing there, smiling for the camera. Story 2. The Last Refusal, Love, Control, and a Final Shot. Our second story is less about nature and more about the ugliest side of human emotion. This couple had what looked like a typical modern love story. They dated for years. Friends said they were inseparable. Social media showed vacations, matching outfits, birthday posts with long captions. But behind the curated photos, there was something else: control. In the months leading up to the wedding, the groom began showing red flags: jealousy, possessiveness, emotional manipulation. The bride confided in a close friend that she felt like she was marrying someone she didn't fully trust anymore. Days before the ceremony, the tension peaked. She told him she wasn't sure she could go through with it. Some of you watching probably know that feeling. When your gut is screaming one thing, but your family, the venue contract, the money, and the expectations are all screaming another. Still, the wedding day arrived. Guests took their seats. The groom stood at the altar. Music played. People smiled, unaware of just how fractured things really were between the couple. But then came the moment nobody expected. She didn't walk down the aisle. There was whispering, confusion. The musicians kept playing a little longer, trying to smooth it over. Eventually, word reached the groom. She couldn't do it. She was refusing to come. Instead of heartbreak, something darker snapped inside him. Humiliation, anger, and obsession collided in a matter of minutes. He left the ceremony, went to retrieve a gun, and returned, not as a groom, but as an executioner. What happened next turned a would-be wedding into a crime scene. Shots rang out. The woman who had finally found the courage to say no didn't live long enough to say, "I'm free." We always tell people, if you see red flags, don't get married. But we rarely talk about how dangerous it can be to walk away from someone who refuses to let you go. Love stories don't always end at the altar. Sometimes they end in police reports and autopsies. This isn't a freak accident. It's a reminder that dream wedding pressure can trap people in situations where the cost of leaving feels higher than the cost of staying, until it's too late either way. Story 3. The Uninvited, When Violence Walks In. Our next nightmare unfolds at what should have been a simple, joyful reception. Imagine a community wedding in a packed hall, kids running around tables, older relatives parked near the walls, teenagers recording everything on their phones, a DJ playing sentimental tracks followed by dance hits. Somewhere outside the hall, there's a conflict most guests know nothing about, an old rivalry, a feud, a local dispute that has nothing to do with the couple, but everything to do with what's about to happen. The wedding is in full swing when a group of armed men arrive. At first, nobody inside notices. Then the doors open, and the energy in the room changes fast. A few guests freeze. Others don't fully process what they're seeing until the first shots are fired. Gunfire inside a crowded hall is chaos, unlike anything most people can imagine. Music mixes with screams. People dive under tables, try to shield kids, or sprint for exits they never paid attention to before. The bride and groom, who, minutes earlier, were smiling for pictures, now have one job: survive. In some real wedding incidents, those shooters weren't there for the couple. They were aiming for one guest or trying to send a message to a rival group, but bullets don't care who they were meant for. Innocent guests, friends, cousins, grandparents, end up dying on a dance floor decorated for celebration. When you go to a wedding, how often do you think about security? In the US, we worry more about whether the bar is open than whether the exits are accessible. We put our trust in the idea that nobody would do something like that here, but the couples in these stories probably thought the same thing, right up until the moment they were crawling on the floor, surrounded by gunfire. Story 4. 10 Days to Forever, a countdown cut short. Now picture this. A couple has been together for 4 years. They've saved up, planned carefully, and circled a specific date on the calendar. In 10 days, they're going to say, "I do." 10 days. In those last days before a wedding, life feels like one big rush. Final fittings, seating charts, family arriving from out of town, last-minute payments to vendors. You're exhausted, stressed, but excited. You're thinking about vows, not violence. For this couple, that countdown ended not at the altar, but on a road. While running a routine errand, a drive they'd probably done 1,000 times, someone else's reckless behavior turned their car into a coffin. One driver's impatience, one distraction, one bad decision, and suddenly the couple was gone. No dress reveal, no first dance, no honeymoon. The invitations were already out. Gifts were already bought. Some guests had already booked flights and hotels. Instead of traveling for a celebration, relatives traveled for a funeral. This story hits differently because there was no dramatic setting, no freak storm, no massive crowd, just two people on an ordinary road, in an ordinary car, wiped out by someone who never even knew their names. We love the idea of destiny. If it's meant to be, it will be. But what happens when you did everything right, and the only thing standing between you and your future is a stranger's carelessness on the highway? Sometimes wedding nightmares don't happen at the ceremony or reception. Sometimes the tragedy is that the wedding never gets to happen at all. Story 5. The Golt Wedding Ambush, Celebration on a Timer. Our next story takes place in a quiet village. The kind of place where a wedding is not just about the couple, it's about the entire community. The celebration had gone on late into the night. By around 4:30 in the morning, the wild dancing was over. The bride and groom, still in their 20s, stepped outside the village hall. Only around 25 to 30 guests remained, close friends and family lingering to talk, laugh, and savor the final moments of a perfect day. The couple climbed into their car, planning to head off as newlyweds. People waved, shouted last-minute congratulations, maybe joked about seeing them after the honeymoon. What nobody knew was that danger was already in motion. A vehicle approached the area. To the few guests still outside, it might have looked like any car driving through the village. But inside were people with a very different mission. In a matter of seconds, the air filled with gunfire. Bullets tore through the night, hitting the car, the surroundings, and the people who just hours earlier had been dancing and cheering. Windows shattered. The bride and groom, who had stepped into that car, thinking it was the first vehicle ride of their married life, never made it to their destination. For investigators, the questions later became, was this targeted, random, connected to something bigger? For the families, none of that mattered. All they knew was that the day that started with vows ended with forensic teams and body bags. Think about how vulnerable that moment is. The grand exit at the end of a wedding. You're tired, emotional, maybe a little drunk, focused on the sparklers, the cheers, the photos. But beyond those circles of light, there's a world you can't see. The scariest truth? You can plan every detail on the inside of the venue. You can't always control what's waiting outside. Story 6. Ashes of Karakosh, the Ceiling of Fire. Now we arrive at one of the most infamous wedding tragedies in recent memory. A story that literally circled the globe and burned itself into people's minds through horrific footage. The setting, a large wedding hall, a huge guest list, decorations everywhere, the bride and groom standing under an elaborate ceiling filled with flammable materials, plastic, fabric, foam. To make the moment even more magical, the couple, or the planners, decide to add pyrotechnics to the first dance. You've probably seen this effect, little fountains of sparks shooting up around the couple, golden light raining down while they hold each other and sway to a love song. Everyone cheers, phones out, recording the moment. Then, in a matter of seconds, the fantasy tears open. A spark reaches the ceiling decor. At first, it's a small flare, the kind people might even think looks cool, but it spreads faster than anyone expects. Flames crawl across the ceiling, then they race. In just moments, burning material starts falling from above like fiery confetti from hell. Panic hits, the lights go out, smoke explodes through the room, and visibility drops to almost nothing. People run blindly, tripping over chairs, tables, and each other. Some head toward exits, only to find them choked with people, or blocked, or too narrow for the flood of bodies trying to escape. Many guests never make it to a door. Some are crushed in the stampede. Others die from smoke inhalation, collapsing with just a few feet to go. The bride and groom manage to escape physically, but emotionally, they're scarred for life. Their happiest day became the deadliest night their community had ever seen. How many times have you watched indoor fireworks or sparkler send-offs at weddings and thought, wow, that's beautiful, without asking, is this safe? In the US, we put a lot of faith in building codes, fire marshals, and regulations. But no law can protect you from a choice someone makes to cut corners, ignore safety, or prioritize aesthetics over basic human life. What these nightmares mean for the rest of us. So why do these stories matter beyond shock value? Because every one of these couples believed what we all believe, that a wedding is a controlled bubble of joy, insulated from the randomness of the world. You gather your favorite people, you spend a small fortune, and you assume that alone somehow guarantees safety. But the reality is this: a wedding is just a big gathering of fragile human beings in a world that doesn't pause for romance. Structural weaknesses, bad weather, obsessed partners, reckless drivers, careless planners, and violent strangers don't vanish just because you put on a white dress and play Ed Sheeran. If you're watching this in the US and you're planning a wedding, or even just attending one, here are some unglamorous questions that can literally save lives. Where are the exits, and are they actually clear? Does the venue follow fire safety rules, or are doors wedged shut to keep it cozy? Are you pushing for risky extras like indoor fireworks, overloaded boats, helicopter entrances, or rooftop parties that look fantastic on camera but could become your last memory? If you're in a storm, is that dramatic photo really worth standing on a high exposed spot with metal railings? Are there any festering conflicts, jealous exes, or dangerous people who might turn up uninvited? No, these questions aren't romantic. They're not going on your Pinterest board. But think of it this way: the real happily ever after isn't the perfect centerpiece, the most expensive dress, or the most viral first dance. It's everyone going home alive. So I want to leave you with one question. If you could see two versions of your wedding in advance, one where everything is perfect on camera but secretly dangerous, and one where a few wow moments are missing but everyone walks out safely at the end, which one would you really choose? I want to hear from you. Which of these stories hit you the hardest? Would any of them actually change how you plan or even attend a wedding here in the US? Would you skip indoor fireworks, refuse a helicopter entrance, speak up about overcrowded venues or blocked exits? Tell me in the comments. And if this video made you look at the big day a little differently, do me a favor. Hit like so the algorithm knows this story matters. Share this with someone who's planning a wedding right now. They might not thank you today, but they might thank you later. And of course, subscribe to the channel for more real stories where celebration and tragedy collide, and where one decision can be the difference between a dream and a nightmare. Before you click away, ask yourself, on the happiest day of your life, how safe do you really want to be?